Hello and welcome once again to Android Developer Office Hours, coming to you from high atop the Android Tower. To my right we have with us our experts Trevor Johns, Alex Lucas, and Joe Fernandez. I'm your moderator, Joe Mallon. We'll start right off with questions from Google Moderator. The first question is there a supported way to use a map view from a fragment or fragment activity with the v4 support library? I found the workaround which makes fragment activity extend map activity and cites something from GitHub.
Okay, I'll take that. And unfortunately the answer right now is this is not supported. I believe we actually do have that documented. It's a limitation we're aware of, and while we can't go and discuss our future plans for the platform, we are aware there's a pain point for developers, and at some point in the future, possibly we will do improve that for you. But right now, unfortunately, there is no approved way to do this, though there are some workarounds that you can find, including the link posted here. Another workaround that we did mention last week is you can, depending on the nature of your app, you could go and pop up a dedicated map view, say inside of a transparent activity, sort of as a dialogue, and have that have that pop up when the user clicks the map link and then get dismissed when they are done with it. And that might work for some apps, though it's not going to work for all apps, so it really does depend on the nature of whatever it is you're trying to develop. So I think that's probably everything to say on that issue.
Okay. Any other ideas? We'll move on. The next question comes also from moderator. I need to load data via a web service, cache loaded data in a local database, and display data from the database in the view. I'd like to use a custom loader to hit the web service and a cursor loader to display it, but loader callbacks can have either cursor or status.
So I think we were a little bit confused about what exactly this issue was, because according to docs for loader callbacks, the response is never status. So if whoever's asking this happens to be online right now, feel free to hop into the Hangout and give us some more information about what exactly the problem is you're having. Unfortunately, we don't know what the answer is because we don't know what the question is. So, yeah, we'd love some more clarification if you happen to be online right now. But since that'll probably take you a minute, since I'm assuming you're not actually on the air right now, maybe we should move to the next question?
Okay, let's move on. How to record audio in good quality which works well in all devices. I tried Media Recorder, but the ACC codec doesn't work in all devices, and AMR codec gives really bad sound quality. Could you help?
Right, so we were discussing this before office hours. It seems like you should have a couple options there. There's two real issues there. One is trying to find an encoder that's going to work across all your platforms. One of the things that you should be doing in your app code is to make sure that you check for what the available encoders are. I forget what the call is for that. Do we have that off the top of our heads?
Oh, I can't remember it off the top of my head.
Okay.
I mean, at the very least, it's going to throw an exception. Yeah. But there should be a more elegant way to do that.
Right, yeah. I mean, you can always choose the default encoder for Media Recorder, which might give you something, will give you whatever the default is, but that might not be enough quality for you. So I think the question is, make sure there's two different types of encodings for audio for AMR. There's AMR WB wideband and narrowband. I think if you want high quality, you want the wideband version.
Yeah, that's correct.
So make sure you're trying to use that one. And I guess the other part of it is, put something in your code that's actually checking for the available encoders before you try using any one of those, because probably you're going to get, I think, an exception thrown if you don't, if you try to use an encoder that's not available.
Yeah.
So
now we were looking through the docs earlier. The docs actually say that AAC should be available on all devices, depending on which container format you're using. So I'm a little curious too about what your exact settings are there. It's possible if you change your container, you might be able to get this to work. But without more details, all we can do is guess.
Yeah, so anyway, I think that's the best we can do for now, and we'll take some of that feedback that we want better encoding and available on a wider variety of platforms.
Yes, definitely.
Okay, great, thank you very much. Our next question from moderator is, I was wondering why HTTP streaming is considered a bad practice for standard mobile applications.
Okay, so we were talking about this before the show. This is another one where we were having a little bit of trouble figuring out what exactly the question was. And our first guess was maybe you're referring to HTTP live streaming for video, which is actually a very good idea. So if you are thinking of playing video and you are going to stream it, HTTP live streaming is an excellent choice. Now, of course, local video is going to work better than streamed video, but since video files are large, normally you do go and fetch those off the network. So a more likely explanation is the poster is asking about streaming data over HTTP from some web service. So say you have, just to take a canonical example here, say you have an RSS feed, and you want to go and fetch the latest news posts. It's generally considered a bad idea to go and try and fetch those news posts whenever the user loads your app and just do things live, essentially, because the user might not have a network connection and the network might be slow. And on top of that, it's just a bad user experience because they're going to have to wait for things to actually go and stream in. Almost universally, the better option is to go and have a background service which goes and fetches whatever content it is you're trying to display and caches it locally to disk, so that when the user launches the app, all the data is already there. Now, when you launch your app, you could go in the background and you have a background thread go and update things to make sure that things really are fresh. But when they launch their app, there should be data ready to display for them, and there shouldn't be any delay. A lot of people use their phones on airplanes, on the train, in places just where network connections are spotty. And your phone should still work in those places. You might not be able to make a call, but Gmail, for example, will still display your email. Your app should still display whatever content it is that it's trying to display.
Great, thank you, Trevor. Any other any other responses? Okay. The next question from moderator is how to connect an Android app to Google App Engine or Python using Sync Adapter. Need a simple tutorial or a small example?
So this one's sort of it's a case-by-case basis how you're going to do this. That being said, I think having even a simple example out there on how to do it is probably an excellent idea. Unfortunately, we don't have any samples available right now, but I'll take that as a feature request, and at some point we'll try and get something published for you. I think that'd probably be a great thing to have. That being said, I think everybody on the team's going to be busy for the next couple of weeks preparing for Google I/O, so we probably won't be able to get you anything until after that, but I think it's a great thing to have. So, feature request noted, and I definitely think it's a great idea.
Well, we actually have a sample app for Sync Adapter.
We do, but it doesn't work with App Engine. It's a...
right.
Yeah. So there is a sample for Sync Adapter, if you want to see how that works.
Right.
Definitely take a look at that.
Yeah. The key thing for Sync Adapter is not necessarily connecting to your web service, whatever it is, but then understanding how to transfer data from it and then synchronize that data with data that you already have on your device.
Yep.
So Sync Adapter will demonstrate that, and it also demonstrates how to do authentication using Google authentication, but you can replace that with your own. And this comes back to some of the other questions that we had earlier about what was the question? Whether loading data via web service, caching it in a DB, and displaying it in a view. And there too, you can use Sync Adapter or a variation on it. The valuable thing about Sync Adapter is that if you use that paradigm, you get a lot of things for free, which is the system will check to see if you have a network available on the device, and it won't do a synchronization. It won't launch your Sync Adapter unless this network is available, which means that you don't have to go check to see if the network is available on your own. The synchronization will happen. You can set it up to happen at an interval that you choose, and then you can rely on it to do all of the automatic work of it sort of runs, and then you use it to download information from the web and store it in a database. That's what the sample app shows you how to do.
Yeah. Now, actually, Roman just pinged me on IM and told me that there actually is an example. It's not a Python example, unfortunately, but there is an example of using Sync Adapter with App Engine. So if you want to take a look at JumpNote, it's code.google.com/p/JumpNote. That's a Notepad example that synchronizes to a Java backend running on App Engine. So it's not Python code, but as Joe said, most of these concepts are portable between whatever environment you're working in. So that should get you 95% of the way to wherever it is you want to be. So definitely take a look at that, and that's some pretty good code.
But I should also we should also mention that the sync adapter is pretty agnostic to what language the server side stuff is written in.
That's what I was saying. But
Yeah.
Sync adapter itself is just a framework for going and handling some sort of synchronization task. It doesn't have to be running on App Engine. It doesn't care what language is on the other end. All that matters is there's some data source somewhere in the world that your application wants to sync, and then it's up to you to write the code that will actually go and fetch that.
Right.
That being said, having a full stack example showing you the code on both the phone and on the server is useful for learning purposes. So, jump note.
And also,
Great.
I'll put in a plug for cloud-to-device messaging, C2DM. It doesn't specify what he's trying to build here, so I would just say take a look at that as well, because there's a good example of Android to App Engine communication, right? And maybe you want to use that as a conduit for whatever you're syncing between your app and the web. So just take a look at that as well as another kind of example. There's actually a very good example out there that you can build and try out for yourself.
I want to say that JumpNote actually includes C2DM support.
Oh, does it?
I've seen links
good.
to it from the C2DM page. So it looks like a one-stop shop for what you should be looking at.
Excellent.
Good. I'm glad that we've had a chance to talk some about Sync Adapter. I don't think people understand enough about how useful it is. So
I don't even understand how
right.
useful it is. It's fantastic.
There's some
It's very
additional
good.
documentation about it in the new contacts provider topic, which is now available online in developer.android.com. It will explain a little bit more about how it works and also how you would use it in a variety of situations. And since we have some people online, I'd like to switch over to them and get their question. Please go ahead.
We're working on an app that has multiple pages, and we were looking at using the view pager, and what we're trying to accomplish is the same effect that you see in Google Play, and we're a little unclear as to how to get the tabs to animate like that. Is that just tab animation on top of the view pager, or is that something else?
So specifically, the animation you're looking for is like when you swipe left and right, to how give me a bit more detail, because the tabs are used in a couple different places in the UI. So which animation?
Like when you go to the Play Store and there's the tabs for like featured, top selling, top grossing, and you swipe between those grid view pages, the tabs animate as well.
Oh yes, that is a feature of ViewPager. Yes.
Okay, so that's some setting in ViewPager that we need to set.
I believe so. That's at least my understanding. At least it does something. Actually, no, I take it back. ViewPager, I think, actually normally uses the normal tab view, right? We have a custom. We should probably re-answer this last question. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm waiting for our producer to give me a thumbs up, which he just did, and so we lost some of our communications, and we seem to be back. I can't see you, but you probably can see me. So while we get that fixed, should we proceed?
Should we speculate on the nature of the failure? Perhaps it was squirrels nibbling on the power lines again?
Yes, squirrels on the wires.
Squirrels on the wires.
Squirrels
problem.
Our fault for getting acorn flavored.
Yeah, so let's go back to the question we were answering right before our stream went down.
Which was?
So the question was how to go and implement tabs the way that's done in Google Play. And so the answer that was provided once again by Roman Nurk, who's ever helpful whenever it comes to UI issues, is to take a look at Pager title strip, and that's what's responsible for going and displaying the current, next, previous indicators. Google Play does use a custom view for that gives it the Google Play look and feel. So you're not going to get something that looks exactly the way Google Play does just by using that, but it does give you the behavior you need to go and define that. And so that's just it's a part of the compatibility library is a view group, and there's methods in there that you can go ahead and override and get the behavior you want for ViewPager.
Okay.
Yep.
Can I ask an addendum to that really quick?
Absolutely.
Is that only the version 4, or should we use version 13? We're only looking at supporting API 14 and above.
This is part of the version 4 one, correct?
Okay. And it's not included in the version 13, or?
I believe so. Yeah, everything in version 4 should be included in version 13, I thought.
Yeah,
I think that's
Should be
the
a
case,
superset.
but yeah, just make sure you just check it just in case. But I believe that's
Yeah,
the
because I
case
think
now.
most of the ViewPager, or I think all of ViewPager actually, for that matter, is part of the version 4 library. And if you write a version 13 app, I think you still want that. So I think it is I believe it's either a. Actually, I've never tried to use both. I don't know if it's a
It's
superset
probably
or
a
if you use
subset of
both
the
at the
version
same
4.
time. I definitely need some more experience with the compatibility library myself, but. Yeah, either way, it should be possible. If you're targeting 13, you can definitely pull in the stuff through version 4 one way or another.
Okay. Thank you.
Great.
Sure.
I'm going to move to the next one that we had in order here, which is it possible to invoke or show an activity from an installed app from the JavaScript method of a page displayed in the browser?
Yes, sort of. There's 2 ways you can go about doing this. But first, the caveat. If you're just a standard web page and you want to go and display an activity and that activity is not cooperative, meaning it hasn't been designed to allow you to do this, it's going to be very, very hard, as in impossible to do this. But if you are the app developer, you have a couple options. The first one, so let's assume that you're coming in through just a regular web page in the browser, and you want to go and launch an activity that you control. You can go and register an intent filter that monitors for certain URLs. So whenever that URL gets loaded, the user will have a chance to bring up your application. So that will make it work in the browser. Fairly easy to do. It's just a couple lines in your manifest. It's not foolproof. The user does get a choice as to which application will handle it, and they could choose to go and launch the browser rather than your app, but it doesn't give them the choice to jump into your app. Now, if you have a little bit more control over the user's browser experience, meaning they're inside of a web view within your app, you can go and register custom JavaScript functions, which will then invoke Java code. So whenever the user makes that call into JavaScript, your Java code will be executed, and your Java code has the permissions required to go and fire off custom intents. And so from there, you can do anything that you can do with a normal intent. Launch your own activity, launch somebody else's activity, including making sure the user doesn't get the activity chooser dialog. So that's going to give the best user experience, but the catch there is you do need to control the browser the user is using, and you have to go and explicitly define these JavaScript methods. Now, I'm trying to remember the name of the call to go and do this. It is part of WebView, though. Let's see if I can actually look it up for you, because I know it's actually right here at the top. Let's see. Add JavaScript interface.
Okay.
And that'll let you, so yeah, from the docs here, this lets you bind Java objects to the web view so they can be controlled from the web page's JavaScript, which it sounds like exactly what you're trying to do.
Okay. Any other comments?
Nope.
Oh, great. Thank you very much, Trevor. The next question I have in the list here is, hello, I was wondering if we could use the methods content resolver insert, update, or delete on the UI thread.
Someone else want to take this one?
Sure, I'll take it. We technically do allow bad ideas, but it's still a bad idea. What you want to do is kick up an async task to do that stuff for you. Generally, it's just a bad idea to do data intensive stuff on a UI thread.
Yeah.
It causes a lot of jank. It'll cause the UI to freeze a little bit.
Yeah. Put more bluntly, never do blocking I/O on your UI thread.
Right.
It's a horrible idea. We'll let you do it, but it's akin to shooting yourself in the foot.
Right.
Right.
We have a developer tool called Strict Mode that will actually throw exceptions when you do stuff like that, and it's a really good thing to turn on during development. Because as soon as you can get through your application without it crashing and throwing strict mode violations, you've taken like a great step forward in user experience.
Right.
Right. There's some simple ways that you could do this depending on how much data you're trying to do. If you've got a large number of method calls to make, you might want to consider doing apply batch, which has some additional features in it that make it really good for doing large data manipulation. It strikes me that you could also use an intent service to handle this for you in the background off the UI thread. Just send the information that you want to have done through an intent, and when it is finished, it can send you back a responding intent, and you call this with you would start the intent service with start service and then send an intent back to the activity that could then tell when the work had been done.
Yeah.
Any other ideas?
I think that's most of it.
Okay.
I'll just finish off with one thing, just to tell you how bad an idea it is to do blocking I/O on your UI thread. On newer devices, if you try and make any network requests on the UI thread, it will cause your app to crash. So in that case, there's actually no way to disable it. Yeah, so for most things accessing local I/O, we do let you get away with it, but you shouldn't. And yeah, just take a cue from the direction the platform as a whole is heading and don't do it. Right.
Good summary.
Yeah.
Next question from moderator. Fragment Manager holds references to old fragments even when they are not in the layout file. It happens when you switch from landscape, which has 2 fragments, to portrait with 1. Find fragment returns the fragment which is not in layout. Is this expected?
So I think this was actually news to most of us here when we saw this question earlier today, but it sounds like there's some caching going on there, so my suspicion is that it is very much expected. And as a workaround, I just say give your fragments different names. That seems like the easiest way to work around this. Alex, did you have any other ideas, or was that pretty much it as far as, because I know we were discussing this earlier.
I was genuinely surprised to hear that it keeps it even after the rotation. I would say, like as Trevor suggested, you can name them differently. That'll definitely solve it. It does seem kind of code smelly though, in terms of you have to throw in an if-else statement and say,
Yeah.
if this or this, whatever. But I'm not really sure right now how else we would handle it. I'm curious if it's support library fragments or built-in fragments, and if maybe there's some caching going on your end, like maybe I don't remember the call on retain non-configuration instance or something like that. You might have a leak somewhere where you're holding on to a reference during the transition. I would definitely look there.
Yeah, because actually, doesn't some of our sample code use the trick where you just go and check and see what fragments are available to determine what whether or not you're running on a tablet or a phone, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and in those cases, actually, even after the rotation, it does work properly. So I don't think this is actually framework behavior. Now that you mention that, I think this is probably something going on with your app that I think Alex is right. There's probably a memory leak here. This is probably not intended behavior. So. Yeah.
Hey guys, I just wanted to add one thing. This is Roman. Don't know if you can see me or not, but
we can't see you, but we can hear you.
Okay. So one thing I just wanted to add on is, in general, I mean, if you're showing 1 fragment in portrait and 2 in landscape, I mean that seems pretty normal. But one thing I do want to make sure that folks understand is that you want to make sure to maintain functional parity across portrait and landscape. So you very rarely want to remove functionality in portrait that you would normally have in landscape. So it may be a case where you may want to just rethink the design to consider how you can work in that other fragment. You don't always have to have it visible. One way to offer the same functionality is to have kind of a sliding fragment that slides in from the left. This is something that Gmail does, for example. And in that case, the fragment is still there, it's just hidden, or its view has visibility gone. So consider ways in which you can do that and not necessarily remove all the functionality of one of the other fragments in portrait mode.
That's a good point, Roman. Thank you. Any other comments? We'll move on to the next question. What kind of data is appropriate for account manager's user data? My app uses account manager to store user profile, but when queried, it returns null. And then there's a link to Stack Overflow.
So my understanding was always that you could store a little bit of data in there. Now, I'd imagine there is a maximum size limit of some sort, but it shouldn't completely disappear. This sounds a little strange to me. Now, you did include the Stack Overflow question, correct? Yes.
Yeah, there's one.
Yeah. So we're going to go ahead and follow up after the show and try and get you some more information from someone on the frameworks team who actually knows what might be happening here. This does sound a little bit off to me, but I've never heard of this happening before. So I don't think any of us actually can give you an answer off the top of our head, but we will research it more for you.
Thank you. Next question. The documentation for it's actually a note, but we will take it to heart. The documentation for contextual action mode should include a hint that implementation of the checkable interface is necessary for the actual highlighting. This was a bit hard for me to find.
All right,
Fair enough.
Okay, thank
noted. I will make sure that our documentation team knows about that as soon as the show ends, and we'll get that fixed for you.
2 numbers are on the screen right now, so.
It's true. Yes, I think
It's
actually.
true.
Joe, fix!
Yes.
Yes, we'll actually open a bug
Put it on my
so
to-do
forget.
list.
We'll just
Right.
have Joe do it. That covers it pretty
That's
nicely.
right. Well, which Joe? Oh, never mind.
We will have Joe
A Joe
to
do
be
it.
disambiguated at
Yeah.
a future date.
It did.
Next question. Showing a marker at a geo URL in Android Maps. Is it possible to have Google Maps on Android show a marker or pin at a specific location?
Yes, it is. You can go ahead and just use essentially the same URL format used for Google Maps in the web UI. So maps.google.com/ $Q equals blah blah blah, and you just put a lat long pair in there, and that's probably the easiest way to go and get a marker to show up at a specific location. Now, reading through the Stack Overflow question that was linked there, I noticed there were a few more questions as far as what the format is of this URL. And unfortunately, the URL itself is not documented. It's a feature of Google Maps that was implemented to go and try and intercept requests to the Google Maps website. And you can take advantage of that as a developer, but the functionality is very simple. If you try and do anything complicated, things are apt not to work. You do get a little bit more flexibility with a map view. And if you even need more flexibility, you can use the Google Maps JavaScript API to go and then embed that inside of a web view. Though there are some catches there about making sure that the UI displays properly. But if you really do want to do anything really complicated, my advice is to go directly to either a map view or the Maps API rather than relying on that URL syntax, because it is undocumented and it probably will change in the future. Given that its target audience is not developers, it's there just to go and handle random web pages on the internet.
Thank you very much. I want to move back to some of the more popular questions here. There's one here that says, is there a way to have an intent that would send you to the market and then fire an intent post-install? It would be neat to be able to advertise a piece of functionality and have a QR code or NFC tag which launched that functionality after install.
That's a really good question, actually.
I don't think so. My interpretation of the question is the person wants to, say from their application, send someone to market to download some other app, and then automatically fire an intent that goes into that app that was just downloaded to do something cool.
Yes, that's my interpretation as well.
So I don't believe so. A way to achieve this, I would say, would be to fire the intent to send the person to Google Play to download the app, and then detect when, after the person has downloaded the app, detect that they've gone back to your app via onResume, and then as soon as the onResume has been called, fire up Package Manager and look through and see if the app you're looking for has been installed.
Yeah, there's a problem with that, though.
Which
if
is
you're
that-
scanning a QR code, you might not have any app installed other than the barcode scanner app that you use to scan it, right?
Right.
Usually, a QR code is going to point to, say, Market.
It's not a perfect solution because the default behavior, or the expected behavior from the user is going to be, I'm going to download an app from Google Play, and I'm going to open the app. I'm not going to go back to the thing that told me to download the app.
I think there might actually be a good solution here, though.
All right.
Because when you install an app to Google Play, there is a way to do referral tracking. And so referral tracking, normally you're keeping track of which activity sent you over, and I think it'll even record the URL if you're coming from the browser. Is that correct, Alex? You know analytics a bit better than I do. It does record the URL, right?
Yeah, you would have to put campaign tracking in the URL that...
Right, so rather than using it for proper referral tracking, you could use that to go and insert some extra metadata into the request saying which QR code was scanned, and then having the app you just installed decode that and then handle it appropriately.
Right.
So, like, I think the example here would be like, let's say it's a restaurant review app, just to pick something off the top of my head, and you scan the barcode, the QR code. It installs the restaurant review app, and then from there it would check the referral data to go and see if what restaurant you reviewed. Now the catch there though is you might already have that app installed.
The other catch is you actually need to be the developer of both apps for that to work.
Do you?
Or you need to, if you add campaign data when you send someone to Google Play, there's no guarantee that the other app that runs is going to look for that data. Or
you definitely need to be the developer of the app that was installed.
Right.
But if you created the QR code and you didn't create the QR code scanner, you could have take the QR code take you to a web page. So QR code takes you to a web page. Web page appends some metadata to its URL, redirects you to market, and then installs your app. Your app checks the referral field and extracts your metadata from the URL.
Right. Assuming the referee app wants to extract that data.
Yeah. Well.
Right.
Yeah. Well, yes. The referee app you have to develop. You have to be the app
Right.
that you just installed needs to be your app. Absolutely.
Right. So this isn't a way to. This wouldn't be a good path for like a Trojan horse. You can't just embed an intent in there.
No.
That will just get fired by anything that gets downloaded through your referral link.
Yeah, I think that the big catch here, though, too, is you want to make sure that when you're installing the app, there is the case that the user already has your app installed. So you probably want an intent filter on your app to go and capture the first URL. This is getting a little complicated. Wow. So QR code goes to a random web page. Your app, if it's installed, will intercept that web page via intent filter. If not, the web page will then cause a HTTP redirect to Android Market, embedding referral data into the URL, which your app will then extract during installation. So yes, it's totally possible,
Right. So
but
I
probably a
think
bit of work.
Bottom line here probably is that it's possible, but I don't think that we can explain exactly how to do it on the air. We'd probably have to write it up somehow.
I think you just
We
did.
probably-
But you have to be really fast to follow it.
We should figure this out
We'll have
afterwards.
to rewind it several times in order to figure it out.
We should all figure this out afterwards and then take pictures of the whiteboard and then just
Right.
post those online.
There you
It must be a mad scribble.
That
That's a
would
good
be
question,
very
though.
good.
I actually that one we didn't see that one before the air, so we didn't have a chance to actually debate on this one. That was fun.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
I'll give the Trevor Johns Challenge of the Day award. Nice question.
We'll move on real quick. Hi, I'm trying to mimic the Contacts app from Android ICS, but I really don't know how it's built. My first approach was to use a fragment activity, adding tabs on the action bar and a view pager that will contain the fragments I want. Any comments?
I think we all have some comments on this one. I'll start because it sounds fun. First of all, if you're using the support library, then you already have an advantage over the built-in Contacts app because you can send yours back. If you're using V4, then yours is installable all the way back to Donut. So awesome. Whatever questions you have on how it's built, the app is, like most of the Android platform, open source under the Apache license. So you can go and look at how it's built. I really recommend digging around in there. My first application for Android was actually a Contacts app, and this is how I learned how to access the Contacts API and how to do a lot of
That's
this
my
stuff.
first step too.
Awesome. Yeah, I just my initial the thing that initially drew me to Android was actually I want to be able to make a phone a better phone and not just put apps in a little sandboxed environment that have nothing to do with the fact that it's a phone, the way that I used to have to on J2ME. So I'm all for building awesome Contacts apps. As Joe mentioned earlier, one of the things that you should keep in mind is that just because you're building a Contacts app doesn't mean you have to build every piece yourself. Things like editing and adding contacts, you can just intent out to the normal Contacts app and skip building these monstrous forms yourself. I really recommend that as a time saver.
Yeah, the Contacts app is actually, the Contacts database is quite complicated. If you look through the docs, it does a great job of explaining it. But it's still there's still several levels of indirection there that go. You have individual contact pieces to contact data, which coalesce into contact entries. But you can have multiple contact entries across different accounts, and it's all explained very clearly. But it's a lot to take in. So for that reason, every now and then I actually do see developers get this wrong. If you use the built-in Contacts app, you're guaranteed to get it right.
Yeah.
So,
Right.
for example, it's really easy if you do the wrong thing to go and display the same contact multiple times, or to accidentally display contact groups, or to display contacts that should actually be hidden from the user. They're in the database, but not something that's set to visible.
Right.
There's a lot of gotchas there. So,
I would. We just published documentation for the contacts provider, which is the provider which backs up the contacts app. That also has a lot of information about the contacts app. I would say that if the primary purpose of your application is not to be replacement for the contacts app, then you should look at using the contacts app itself to do your work for you, because you can activate it using intents, and that is documented in the new guide. If, on the other hand, you really do want to implement your own contacts app and you've got some great ideas, I encourage you to do it. As we've said, it's part of the Android open source project, so that you can look at the source for it and go from there. But keep in mind, as we've also said, that the contacts provider is very, very flexible, and therefore it's complex. It's worth reading the guide and getting an idea of how it's all set up before you rush off to do your application, so that you get a better idea of really what you want to do.
and if you do development or do write any of this, make sure you're using it on a device with real-world data, because there's a couple use cases that if you're just using an emulator or a development phone, you might not catch. The biggest one being that other applications can go and insert data into the contacts database that the user would never normally see.
Right.
Hey guys, this is Roman.
Yep.
One thing, if I think the question was partly around UI, and that's obviously what I specialize in. But if the question was specifically around like how to integrate tabs and a view pager, like I think the question was asking like how do you get tabs flipped up to a view pager. There's actually a new article, or a relatively new article on Android training, developer.android.com/training, called Implementing Effective Navigation. And under there, if you look at lateral navigation, which basically is navigating horizontally across screens, there's a section on swiping between tabs that will show you how to do this. It won't show you how to do everything like have a grid of photos and things like that, but it'll show you how to basically hook up a view pager and tabs.
Thank
I'm
you.
actually going to read that later.
Good. Next question, we'll move on because we've got a lot of questions today. Hi, I'm developing on the NDK. I'm using OpenCV and I need a few XML for this. For each XML, I need to find out its path. The problem is I don't know how to add the XMLs to the APK. If I would added it as a Java resource, I wouldn't know the path.
Okay, so the answer there is it actually doesn't have one. When you insert things into an APK, when you're using Java at least, you'll notice that it creates an r.java file, which has a identifier for each resource you add. That's essentially an offset inside of your APK explaining where everything is stored, with the caveat that your APK is actually compressed, so things are going to move around. But in the uncompressed APK, it explains the offset where everything is stored. Now, the problem with that is you don't really have easy access to that from within third-party libraries that aren't aware of Android. If you are using Android APIs, we'll usually have a way for you to go and specify that resource ID and extract things directly. So, given that, my recommendation is actually to go and use Package Manager to go and extract these resources, write them somewhere that's actually on a normal, POSIX file system. So, write it to internal storage or shared storage, and then pass that file descriptor back into your application. And that's probably going to give you the best way to go and handle this. I wonder if I've never heard of maybe actually going and writing a library that lets you go and generate a fake file descriptor. That'd be hard in C++. Actually, I don't think you could do that.
Honestly, don't know.
Yeah, in Java you could probably get away with something, but in C++ you're probably limited to going and writing it out to the file system.
Yeah, I see a comment in the questions here that basically says what you're suggesting. Throw it in the raw, create a raw directory in your resource file and copy that resource with your Java code into a location that you can then read it from the NDK.
Right.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
So
That's a good
sounds
point.
a little bit like a hack to me, but I guess that's
Well,
the best
you're
answer we've
working
got.
in an environment that's not aware of Android, right? So
Right.
you're going to have to go and do some hacks to make the environment look like not Android.
Yep. Okay, let's move on. Is it possible to determine a user's market Google Play Store country. The Stack Overflow question has more detail of why.
Okay, so I think we have to actually pull up the Stack Overflow question.
Go ahead.
If I can find it. Do you know the...
Oh, sorry.
Which page
Here,
is
let
it?
me. It says determine Android has an application with 2 brands. The application is the same brand for all the world except one country. Other applications can launch the application using an intent. If it's not installed, then the other applications can take the user to the market, Google Play, to get the application. Since there are 2 versions of the application with different package names, is it possible to determine the device's country so that when navigating the user to the market, we can specify which package to use?
Not reliably. There are some tricks you can use. The problem is what the user's country is not really well defined. One approach is to actually do geolocation, turn on GPS or the course location provider. Probably course location provider is better. And then figure out where the user is physically located in the world. Another option is actually to do reverse IP address lookup and figure out what the user's ISP says their country is. A third option is to look at the user's SIM card and see what the MCC mobile country code is and see what their carrier says they are. And then a fourth option is to actually look at the towers and see where in the world the user actually is, regardless of where their SIM card is issued. And trying to figure out from all this data where the user is actually located and which app you should show is a little complicated. And I'm not sure really off the top of my head what the best approach I'd recommend there is. It looks like you're trying to say something, so...
I would say that you should let the user decide. There's lots of different ways to guess at what country the user is quote unquote using, but you can take a phone, look at the user's locale on the phone or any other sorts of things that only tells you where the device is currently located and what the user currently has their locale set to. It does not tell you what their country is, and depending on what you mean by is will depend on what you want to do with the user. So you should explain the choices, I think, and let the user make the choice of which application they want to get. Now, if you want to limit people, then you might want them to enter their home address or something like that, or use something like that in order to determine what you want to offer to them. But other than that, mobile devices especially are mobile, so you can't really use anything reliably to tell you that this person is absolutely in their country is Singapore. They're in Singapore, they're looking at the app, but they may want to have the app that corresponds to India or Malaysia or Australia for that matter. So
yeah, and even the SIM card, which is usually a fairly reliable indicator because that's where the user bought their SIM card from, right? It's where they get service. Well, the user could be traveling to another country and have a loaner SIM installed, or they could have a device which doesn't even use a SIM card, so even that doesn't work too reliably. So I think Joe's absolutely spot on here. Really, the best policy is to ask the user and look at the locale as a hint. But really, this needs to be something the user needs to have a choice about, if you want to do it reliably anyway.
I was going to suggest actually if the problem really is about delivering a specific type of set of functionality to a specific country, then maybe what you need to do is have a separate APK which is only targeted to that country. So when you're doing your distribution and publishing, you put it on Play and you say, this APK goes to this country and this other APK goes to everywhere else.
Do we allow doing multiple APK targeting by country? I can't remember.
I think you can at least target it by language. I'm pretty sure you can do that bit. So, but if it's really a concern that you want to deliver functionality to only a specific country, I think that's probably your best bet, because if you're delivering that APK, the same APK to all country locations, depending on what kind of an app it is and how concerned you are about security and your code getting into country X versus country XYZ, you probably don't want to deliver that code to that country and then try to disable it there. Yeah. So that's just another way to slice that problem.
that's a great point.
Yeah, and actually, I think there's even a third answer here, which is, I think Joe, the Joe to my right, was hinting that the fact that you should really only have one package name per application, and so if multiple APK doesn't give you the behavior you want, maybe a good approach would be to go and actually have the application dynamically adjust its visual appearance at runtime depending on where it detects the user is. So if I'm in the US, display the US branding. If I'm in the UK, display a variant that's UK branding. This assumes that the app still looks fundamentally similar, and it's just minor changes. You don't want to confuse the user. But this way, it's still just one package name for everything, which makes life a whole lot easier.
Right. Yes, it could be something the thing that you're talking about could be something as simple as a different name for an application depending on what country it's in, just because of trademark issues. And if that's the case, then you probably want to go by locale or something else and do with it the best you can. I mean, you can't prevent something from accidentally showing up, but you can make your best effort. We're running out of time, so I think we should move forward here.
Andrew on the Hangout has a question.
Go ahead, Andrew.
Hi, I have a question about can you hear me okay?
Absolutely.
Yeah, yep.
The pop-up window. So I'm trying to create a pop-up in my application. Well, I created a pop-up in my application by taking the pop-up window source code and making a sort of a custom version. And the problem I'm faced with is inflating a view from XML. I'm having trouble setting the size of the parent view in the XML and it being that size. So I always get it to be essentially wrapped to the size of the children, and I can't figure out the correct way to, if I know I want a pop-up to be a certain DP width or height, when I set that in the XML and then I inflate it and call measure with unspecified as the measure spec, it seems to just ignore what I have set in the parent version, and I'm sure there's something I don't understand there, but does that make sense?
Mostly. So, but now by pop-up, now what's the actual class you're using? Is it a because I don't think we actually have something called a pop-up, do we? It's either like a dialogue
so there's a class called pop-up
right?
window.
It's called
Pop-up window, you said?
pop-up window.
I'm pretty sure it's not. It doesn't extend view. It's just its own class.
Oh, there it is. Pop-up window. Yes. I don't think
yeah,
I've chose that one. Roman has something to say. Roman.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I've spent way too much time with pop-up window. Now, I may not know the exact answer, but one thing I wanted to check is when you're calling inflate, are you providing a container?
So I'm using the container that's inside the pop-up window class, the frame layout, and I'm setting a background resource, a 9 patch, to be that background. And then the reason I've modified the pop-up window to be my own class is I wanted to have it always be there, not only there when there's a background set. So I've made it so that the frame layout is always the background, and it's whatever the background resource is set to. And then when I call set content view, it sets the actual view that's inside it. And
that makes sense. Sorry, that makes sense. The one thing I would just watch out for is when you call inflate, if you make sure you pass in that container, because if you don't pass in the container to the actual inflate call, your layout parameters, like your layout width and your layout height, they just get disregarded.
Okay.
So that may be one thing to watch out for. I don't know if that's the exact.
That might be, because I think what I'm doing is I'm inflating it, so I'm extending this new custom class. I'm inflating a view and then calling set content view, but I'm just passing in null as the parent. So that would cause it to disregard whatever I've said in the XML parent?
Yes. Yeah, so when you call inflate with no parent, it can't create a layout params object for that for the root level view. So it basically just creates a null, well, not a null, but like a very a trivial layout params with wrap content. Yes.
Okay.
Good answer, Roman. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think we've got time maybe for one last question. There's a question here that says, do self-compiled builds of Android and the Android kernel, that is Goldfish, need to be configured in a certain way so they can take advantage of GPU emulation -GPU on and CPU hyper-V support?
That's a very good question.
Yes, they do. So I don't having worked with the guys who built some of that stuff, they had to create special system images to make that work. So I'm not sure if that's actually available in the open source stuff yet. Given your experience, I'm guessing that it's not. So I think you're going to be kind of out of luck for the time being until we get that into the open source stuff. But yeah, there is some specialness that you have to do in order to make that system image be able to do the GPU emulation and the Hyper-V emulation. So yes.
Good. Great. I'm glad we had someone that could answer that. All right. I think that does it for today. I want to thank everybody for showing up and our panel of experts for trying to answer all of the questions. We had some excellent questions today, and I encourage you to come in next week and join us again. Thank you all.